And welcome to Misnomer of the Month, and that is Friends of Canadian Broadcasting. Now, it doesn't really mean that. It means really good friends with the CBC. Friends of Canadian Broadcasting, well, why didn't they go to bat for us? Sun News, 97 hours a week of original Canadian broadcasting, employing about 120 Canadian people. So where were they supporting us? No, Friends of Canadian Broadcasting means a particular implementation of strict liberal values and virtues on the Canadian people. And there's a photograph here of Tom Mulcair, and there's Peggy Nash, and there's Andrew Cash, who I think gets some money from the CBC, doesn't he? But Peggy, you know me, Peggy, we're friends, you're my MP. I could lose my job if we don't get the licence. Are you going to bat for me? Anyway, John Robson joins us now from Ottawa. John, they're very upset because although the CBC gets hundreds of millions of dollars of public money, the government is suggesting maybe, some sort of loose supervision or control, and this is too much for these people to take.
Yes, these people do get the vapors easily, and this seems to me to be a classic, not uniquely but Canadian, but certainly characteristically Canadian case of an argument which attains a remarkable decimal level if you prefer, without managing much to somehow squeeze much content into the cloud of rage and noise. Because surely the question is this: if, as it's Ian Morrison, who is the head of the Friends of Canadian Broadcasting and seems to have been for a great many years, he says, governments do not control the public broadcaster in free and democratic countries. Then who does? That's what I would like to know, because they're not driven by commercial pressure to appeal to, what do they call that gang? Oh, the audience, the gang of idiots, yeah. Okay, so audience doesn't control it because they don't need to attract viewers or listeners. The government doesn't control it. The legislators don't control it. Taxpayers don't control it, although they fund it. So who does? And in response to this, what does Stephen Harper, former Libertarian and now chief sneerer, say? He says that Thomas Mulcair has shown where his loyalty lies because he will, quote, stand with union bosses, promising to protect their interests around the bargaining table. That is precisely why taxpayers will never trust the NDP to handle the nation's finances. You're irresponsible. But why doesn't he come back and say, if it is a government agency, it must be controlled by the administration, subject to the scrutiny of the legislature? Why doesn't he make a point out of political philosophy instead of just taking a cheap shot at the partisan fortunes of his main partisan opponent? Surely we can all do better than that. Well, maybe we can't.
No, can we see a photograph again, please, of the Ian Morrison and his friends? And there is, just hold that there for a moment, because there's, I suppose irony is the word. The man in charge, long-term, it seems a rather dictatorial position, of the Friends of Canadian Broadcasting, looks very much like a down-market host of a down-market American quiz show. Isn't that odd? Anyway, whatever. But the hypocrisy, of course, I mean, it just splashes everywhere. The CBC has a particular point of view. The NDP and the Liberals love that point of view. Friends of Canadian Broadcasting love that point of view. If they were just honest about it and said, we want our opinion to be heard and seen all over Canadian media, at least you could take them a bit seriously. But they lie all the time. They pretend it's about objectivity. Well, it's not. It's about having one point of view pushed on Canadian people every single day with public money.
Yeah, and they're quite confident that if the organization is lavishly funded from the public sector and subject to no external controls, since they don't seem to have any they want, people like them will invariably capture and hold the organization, and therefore it shall reflect what ought to be said and done in this country and help bring people around to the right way of thinking. I remember of a line from Yes Minister when Hacker is questioning the cultural subsidies, and he's informed by Sir Humphrey Appleby that culture is not about what people want, Minister. It's about what they should want but don't. And I think there's very much that tone here, sort of improving nature of CBC discourse, provided, of course, that no yahoos get a hold of the reins.
But John, look, Yes Minister, wonderful show, by the way. They're resurrecting it. I don't think it's going to work. But they're talking about the BBC and about the National Opera and so on. Now, as annoying as it may be that patricians dictate what is culture, at least some of this stuff was pretty impressive. This is the CB. This is Little Mosque on the Prairie. This is drama that is so achingly bad that you want to laugh at it, as opposed to the Canadian comedy that's so unfunny on the CBC that you want to cry.
Yeah, but I actually don't. I don't care what it is. I don't care if they'd be showing William Shatner in his second and I think most impressive incarnation as a really funny guy in movies and TV shows. It's either going to pull its own weight or it should be off the air. And if it is going to receive public subsidies, it must be scrutinized. Again, it's part of this broader thing, and it's not just people on the left who talk this way, although, or arguably everybody's on the left. This notion that, oh, well, it's arm's length. When some government organization is misbehaving and say we want to do something, oh, but it's arm's length. Why is it arm's length? Whoever came up with this, if it's getting public money, it must be scrutinized. I mean, we've been struggling since Magna Carta to make sure that things that happen in the executive branch were controlled by the legislative branch, which in turn is controlled by us, the people who vote. And suddenly someone comes up, and it could be a Tory, it could be a Liberal, it could be anybody. Oh, but that one's arm's length. Yeah, James I of England liked things being arm's length. That is to say, nobody can stop me. Who's going to try? But it just mystifies me, this idea. They're saying, oh, well, if the government's running it, there might be editorial control. Really? You think, like, the government might appoint people with a certain point of view and they determine editorial direction? No. That's not what we meant. We want the government to do that. We just want to pretend we can't stop it.
Magna Carta was 1215. James I came to the throne in 1603. Did they have much TV in those days? No,
but they had control of speech on behalf of the executive that the Parliament wasn't meant to touch. And Parliament touched it anyway. Good for them.
James I, was a strange man. His tongue was too big for his mouth, so that meant whenever he held court, he salivated a lot, which is not such a bad thing. It was very entertaining. Hey, as always, a great pleasure. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.